The cold wind swept across the valley, rattling the wooden shutters of every farmhouse and carrying the scent of pine and frozen earth. In the heart of this unforgiving winter, the town whispered stories of a man who was as solitary as the mountains surrounding them. His name was Clay Donovan, a cowboy whose broad shoulders, rugged hands, and piercing green eyes had made him the subject of every local woman's daydreams for years. Yet despite the attention, Clay had refused them all. Weddings, courtships, even casual flings. He had rejected every woman in the county, and the gossiping neighbors couldn't understand why. Some said he was heartbroken from a love long lost. Others believed he simply feared the chains of commitment. Whatever the reason, Clay's solitary life on the vast ranch outside the town had become legend. Each morning, Clay would saddle his horse, Dust, before dawn and ride across the frosty fields, checking fences, feeding the cattle, and repairing barns with hands that knew the strength of work but seldom felt tenderness. His life was rhythm and routine, as predictable as the sunrise over the hills. Yet despite the endless chores and cold nights by the fire, Clay carried an emptiness inside him, one he never admitted even to himself. The town's women had tried everything, baking pies, sewing quilts, leaving notes on his doorstep, but Clay remained impervious, as if their attempts were invisible to his eyes, lost in the vast space of his silent heart. But one icy evening everything changed. The wind howled and snowflakes danced. In the dim light as a lone figure trudged along the muddy path toward his barn. She was unlike any woman he had ever seen, tall, with hair the color of autumn wheat, cheeks flushed from the cold, and eyes sharp and fearless. She carried a basket of food and firewood, her boots leaving deep imprints in the snow. When she reached him, she stopped, meeting his gaze without a trace of shyness. "You're Clay Donovan, aren't you?" she asked, her voice calm but commanding. Clay, taken aback, simply nodded, his hand tightening on the reins. "I'm Eleanor Hayes," she continued, "and I'm not here to sell you pies or ask for a dance. I want to know, do you want a wife or just a winter alone?" The question struck him like a bullet. Clay had never been asked such directness. Every other woman had approached him with flattery, charm, or desperation, but Eleanor spoke with a clarity that startled him. He stared at her, searching for deceit, for a hidden motive, but found none. She was genuine, confident, and unafraid. His usual defenses faltered. For the first time in years, Clay found himself unsure of what to say. Days passed and Eleanor didn't leave. She stayed, helping him feed the animals, fix broken fences, and even stoke the fire with hands that seemed to warm the room just by being near him. Her presence was a challenge to his solitude, and though he denied it to himself, Clay felt a stirring inside that he had long suppressed. He watched her work, admired her strength, and found himself sharing moments of quiet laughter he hadn't experienced in years. The town whispered in disbelief. Eleanor Hayes, a woman of both fire and intelligence, had not only approached Clay Donovan, but had settled into his life without a hint of fear. One evening, after a particularly grueling day of repairing the north pasture, Clay found himself sitting beside her by the fire. She handed him a mug of steaming coffee, their fingers brushing ever so slightly. "You know," she said, "winter isn't meant to be endured alone. Some storms are easier to face with someone at your side." Clay looked at her, the firelight reflecting in his eyes, and felt the weight of every lonely winter pressing down on him. He wanted to tell her he didn't need anyone, that he was fine alone, but the truth was, he had grown tired of pretending. "Eleanor," he started, his voice rough but steady, I don't do this. I don't let anyone in. I've tried. I've failed. And yet here you are asking me a question I can't ignore." She smiled, her eyes softening, and placed a hand on his shoulder. "Then maybe it's time to stop trying to be alone. Clay, maybe it's time to choose warmth over pride, trust over fear." For the first time, Clay felt a crack in the armor he had built over years of solitude. Memories of past rejections, lost loves, and endless winters alone flooded his mind, but they didn't frighten him. Instead, they made him realize how much he had missed, how much life had passed him by while he clung to his isolation. That night, for the first time in decades, Clay Donovan stayed awake by the fire, talking, laughing, and imagining a future he had never allowed himself to see. A future with Eleanor by his side. The snow continued to fall outside, but inside the cabin warmth blossomed, not just from the fire, but from a connection neither had anticipated. Eleanor had entered his life with a simple, fearless question, and it had shattered the solitude he had cherished so fiercely. Clay Donovan, the cowboy who refused every woman in the county, began to understand that love was not weakness, but courage. The courage to let someone in, to share not only the warmth of a winter night but the depths of one's heart. By the time the first hints of dawn crept over the horizon, Clay had made a choice he had avoided for years. He didn't yet know what the future held, nor could he predict the challenges ahead. But for the first time he welcomed them, because he was no longer alone. And as Eleanor looked at him, her eyes bright with hope and warmth, Clay knew that the story of his winter was only beginning, and that it would be a story neither solitude nor pride could ever erase.